ثاخرالا مخنية وين ألولا من بدرة ثاخرالا خشلامة مني طالع حبي ويقاري طالع خشلامة مني طالع حبي ويقاري طالع قوم قروس وليبي عززت آيات الكيف قوم قروس وليبي عززت آيات الكيف لك منشنشو عدانا رمث اخت لا دوالا لك منشنشو عدانا رمث اخت لا دوالا كل شي رخمر تشموني لبي بشات اخرانا كل شي رخمر تشموني لبي بشات اخرانا اوي مقوق قروس وليبي عززت آيات الكيف قوم قروس وليبي عززت آيات الكيف آيات لبتني نواوات آيات بزوني بشتاوات آيات لبتني نواوات آيات بزوني بشتاوات إذا ميذا مشواوات قامت عسق صبرتاوات إذا بيذا مشواوات قامت عسق صبرتاوات تسقطها وبطناي القوشة بن دواي تسخبها وبطناي القوشة بن دواي جيزي وقاشات ودخو شنقو أسمار وأورو جيزي وقاشات ودخو شنقو أسمار وأورو شعيوتا ومر تشموني سامونا يل.
Good afternoon, my name is Sam Kassab from Bet Nahrain Media. Today is Thursday, May 21st, visiting Mike George in his office here and interviewing him to touch in early time of Tilkipnai arriving to Detroit. And he is born in Detroit, but his father is one of those pioneers and a lot of member of his families. Mike, good afternoon. How are you?
Fine, Sam. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
Thank you for taking time and allow us to come here. Mike, would you introduce yourself, your name, and your father name, your grandfather name, and family name, and tell us a little bit what do you remember about Lucia family, if you remember what it originally?
Well, my name is Michael George. My father's name was Tom George Tobia. My mother's name was Naima. Her maiden name was Shamami. My grandfather's name was George Lucia. We're of the Lucia family, and when my father came here, his name was Tom George Lucia. But when he got to immigration, he couldn't read or write or spell, so they put down Tom George. So when he was the first one to come to the United States from our family. So when he came, when all my uncles came after him, they thought it was the American system, so they changed their name from Lucia to George. So of all the Lucia family, as big as we were, everybody changed their name with the exception of one of my uncles. He was more educated. He knew what our true family name was. So that was sort of funny because when people say, I'm your cousin and my name is Lucia, and why did you change your name to George? Really, the immigration did that. I never had the opportunity to see my grandfather or grandmother because they were born in Tulkepe and they died in Tulkepe. My father came here when he was very young. My mother was very young. My older brother and sister, Shaka and Andrea, came with him from Iraq, from Tulkepe. And I was born here. And so basically, as a matter of fact, because my mother and father only spoke Surath, Chaldean, I learned how to speak Surath before I learned how to speak English. I actually learned English in school.
ذاك ما حكيت سورة يعني كلش رندخ يعني سورة ديوخ سبيثة لا.
ما كان Surath. بلقي بغلط خاصة بس بلقي بخوخن Surath من الإنجليزي but جرب المغربي.
هو يا أخو وكبير كلام من العراق ولد عليك محكى سورة وايدك محكي وهو يا أخي يعني رندوت.
دخميري لبلي Surath خمن لبلي إنجليزي وهو يا أخو يمن زي اللي مدرسة كل ناشخ شولي أنا ثلي من العراق. ليه they do هو يا أخو. So قاعد مدرسة لبلي إنجليزي you know. نثبت شناش بس نشواثن من الأمريكان إيجا ناشدين لكذي وكبير أمريكان وجزديو مني لك محكاوى إنجليزي رندو so شو لا بلكي بجنوي مني take advantage of them you know so لا ويا رندو.
مايك إن بابوخ أنا محسن عم طبيعة كده بلطلم تلكيبه يعني داث الأمريكا ما قوي عمره.
He was 19 years old, and my mother was, no. My father was 22 and my mother was 19. And what happened is that, my mother was 12 when she got married, and my father was 16. But she didn't have her first child until she was 15, because over there they got married very young, as you know.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, my mother-in-law was married at 12 also.
My mother-in-law 12. we all understand that the Catholic culture.
I think the women matured a lot quicker over there, maybe because of the weather, or maybe because
organic food.
Organic food, or maybe because of the milk they drank, natural milk. Yeah, you're right.
But he left Tulkepe, and what year he left? Do you remember what he left Tulkepe?
He left in 1929.
1929.
Yes.
And how did he get idea to leave? Was invitation some friend before, some other member of the family, or how prepare himself to leave? He tell you stories that.
My understanding was that we had a few pioneers come to the United States in the 1920s, and some of them came and then they went back to Iraq, to Tulkepe. And when they went back, they talked about America, how wonderful it was, the opportunity here. And so those of them that came here and went back, they came back again.
You remember the names?
There was one last name was Kassab, one was Nagara, one was Corey. There was a few of them. There wasn't too many people at the time. So what happened is that everybody in Tulkepe really wanted to come to the United States because it was a land of opportunity. My father made a decision to come. He was the eldest of the family of 11. He made a decision to come primarily because of economic opportunity. The Hasel Padam, the Tamab got Tulkepe, he was a farmer. Nashidien Xariwa Mishim vegetables or fruit. Shakli Walet, Mosul, Kamzabni Waletama. Ukulawa Snika. The Kabir Mitham Kabne, Chunashilazil Madraso, Madrasa where Hamaditin Nashid to our Kalisha Tira. So, Theracha, Kumshauka Yimi about Tulkepe to Hashato, Theracha, Plichalimit. Nashid Dian de Kidewo, I've got grocery business, Mzabona, Ichalo. Plechele me, Hasul Chasapade, وان بارك مشادرة قاخت الكيب ويمي وخوني وخاثي ثلا اما. So
So Mike بقاوت الكيب كود بلوتلمنت الكيب أو من إيما أرخش قلة ثيالة باخرة طبعا بس بين من إيك الزلو ثيالة.
أنا شمالي لكني العدل يلا بس شمالي يعني زل من تلكيبة to England من England شقلة the Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mary boat وثالة to New York about Ellis Island.
نعم.
ومن تامو شقلة train وثالة ديترويت. أنا كمرت ناشد بابي كي بالزوال شيكاغو بس لكي هذا قراية وكثاوة so even train ثالو حمل بقاو ديترويت you know this was the end of the line يعني زال بشكار بزال بقاو مايو وكمان هو هذا قلود من ناشد يعني كي بالزوال شيكاغو well لكي ذن for sure بس أنا كي ذن إيجا هنري فورد وبوالا خمشريات بقعد يومو ناشدات آخو بلخي بس بشكار بمدوقو أثوال نشواث آخو وتلكم نايد كاذا ولا so ناشد كزالة جيبت كيدي ناشد you know
نعم.
متلازم محكا مين
هذا خيرة.
so شمالي من بابي يعني من زلت بالخ مدخنة لك بلا من هذا لك هذا قراية وكثاوة so زلت بلخلن بد ناشدية من تلكيبة آخو أبقى grocery store ولب لكل مدي ومن تاما بثقل استعدية you know.
So مطيلة ديترويت آخر إنجليزي لك هذا كما بالخيل ناشديا. ملك تاخر يعني من بيشة تقاميث ب 1929 من ثوت تلك بنايدو أو آخر بو وقت شمنايد يعني بغزير أو كلهم طيلة ما قوات تلك بناي 1929 بقاو ديترويت
1929 لخشون وبشكار إسري ناشي بلكي 30 ناشي ده كذا نانا ده كذا for sure يعني بس كذا يعني من 1929 من ثلا والحرب about 1940 بس وهو 80 families ولابش كابر إن أربعة مناشة
وال 1940
1940 yeah.
ملك تخرجوا من دن عوائل يعني دثوا موجودين دمروخ بيش كابروا بينا بقاو الشولة دثوا على وقت من دانه يعني من 1929 عم طوبية ألم حسين مطيل آخر سؤت وانا شيخ مقمن آخر من هو أني تلك بناي who are those called تلك بناي before him
ثوا بيكوري زونا ويبك لك هذا بالي كلها شميخ قماية وثوا بيكاسا
ما يثمن بيكاسا أنطوني وآخر أنطوني كساب
لا لك هذا بالي الشبه لا
سيفو
أني ثلا بطل محارب سيفو سيفو بي
سيفو كسا
لا مريم
أو سيفو
سيفو مريم وراغو وثوا داود كوري هو يسمى داود كوري وبيكسر كذا كذا بالشمال انشلي بس ثوا هم على الملكة بسمى ديف كوري وهو هم خنوا على ثوال ستار ثوال بار هذا هو about bar business كلها خنوا ثوال ستارات دي خالو و توبي حكيم ثوا جواتشو ثيل من مكسيك لو لثلا من يعني خنا قماية بس دمنا غاد يعني لا كاتب بالي كلي بس كبير واوا ثوا خامو حامي ناشديا شم ستefan كاتب بالي وثوا جورج نيجر هم جورج نيجر وأخوانه لوي نيجر أنا ناشد ثلا قماية
أنا قماية وآخر
يا قماية يس
بس زي صورته بكثاوت شمعون دابش ثوا 1925 فيلا وثلاثة بكساب آخر نعمو كسا
أو نعمو كسا يس
أنطوني كسا وسيفو يوسف كساب سيفو
يعني لا كاتب بس نعمو كسا كاتب بالي
نعم أوكي
كان كاتب بالي مثل عايش هو جبد بيثن بس أنا خلنا لك إذن ولا زورا ونو ولك إذن ولا كل الناس أنا كزاوي المدرسة وكزالي البلاخو سلكم خزننا كلها وكلها وبلاخة يوم وليلة لبو خزن ناشدين
نعم.
بس بقاود من هيك زو على بلايل من شذب ترسل بليلة ومخبش مخشكو otherwise هو بلاخة يوم وليلة
ديترويت غير شكل وابا وقت.
كلش بسمت واو.
مايك بقميثة يعني in early time شو المحقق قصة بسورة بالإنجليزي لأنهم بعيدنا. In early time دام of 1920s and 30s 85 families. إثولوخن إيتا.
لا.
إيك الزوالوخن بوقت.
أثوا it'd be Syrian Orthodox downtown Detroit كلن كزوالان تامو وخوني وخاثي وثلاثة مخاثي قوية تامو بات إيتو where شمد إيت St. George's Syrian Orthodox Church. So that's why إيتو والماك the Father B. Dawid Bothaman World War II man 1950 ثيريك I'm sure إيتو بس كلها مسائل like ثيب بقاود مشيم بقاد كثاود إيتو like هذا بالي بس but 1920s and 30s لثوا 80 families بيشلا 80 بقاد 1940 من لثوا كبير ناشن بثايا بنيو ماثو أثوالا كودا.
Mike, so 1930s maybe 40-50 families in Nashwawa.
Not even that many, but there wasn't that many.
يعني ما يعني كل جمع له لغذاذ كمناسبات دقوارة or activity. دق جمعية بغذاذة يعني دق ملتقى بغذاذة بطر الشولة يعني قمية 3 سيارات همين هذا.
كاثب بالي من أثوا حفلة. دعوة يا مندي. إم بدووا تلك بنايو كلها عزبي ولا. ولو وقناش بس كلن يمكن كتخوخ بقى خبيثه كلها وتامو بيتك ما مليو بس كلها ناشا كاثا ناشا رابع وزور كله وثوالن دعوة بداثا 3 من ناشا.
سو قميثة يعني ناشا دي يعني جمعيوة هذا أخوة مناسبات كنت كاثيوة خاثة الأمريكا دخي يعني بصخيوة بقاوة جمعية اتوغ ذكريات ميموري الدث من دي هذه ما تخرت
يمن كاثيوة خا من العراق تلكيبة كل وحفلة كزوال جيب النشواثة وكلها ناشدين كزوال جيب كل ليلة محكوية باسد دخيل نشواثة دي تامو نشواثة آخو كلها واكيب الشمي دخوا مسال تامو بقى تلكيبة so يمن كاثاوة خير خطريق لك بلخي مث كنا عشق شاقلا براي مخويلة مندي وبداثة خنا بزاون جل خنا خازيل بيشم ابارتمنت يا دوك دامخ وما قد خازيل شولو well لا بشولانة الناشدين so كلها زلاب يمن كاثا محامي دكتور teacher لا ثوابا دودي من مساد لو مش زي المدرسة آخو.
نعم.
So ما كودي كذلك بلخي خند دثوالا ستورات. So يمن لبلا دخ بلخي بقعد ستور لا دودي شمني خندو هم يفتح لا ستورات. وزد له كلها زد له من هذا.
بابو خمطين الأمريكا شوريل ببلاخة وبيواد الشولة أول شول دود الميوة. ماشي شورا مشوريل ببلاخة.
أما أثوالس مشوريل أثوال ستور كلش زورو مش ناقص 1000 square feet. وكاثب بالي كزاري مدرسة إيش هو دبنت ستور ديان أنا كزاري مدرسة وبقاعد بقعد يومه كزوالي ستور الدخل مشي من اللانش دي ومن تامك كزوالي قاخرت المدرسة ومن تامك بيثو.
اكتخرت بيثو قماية تامد عيشتو بقاوي؟
إيه.
ما من دكتور طنطلة بشتلا.
لكيدا كاثب بالي وابقعد ميدبري ستريت بقعد ديترويت وهم بيثو رابو ويو.
نعم.
وبنيو ماثا كلها ناشدين كزوني وبيثو دي وابقى قرنيثو من ده لكي ذنقاي.
Okay.
You know, they go there because we had lucky من تلكيب
يعني بيت ديو قرنيثة ديو خد كانت تامارا
لا لا بيت بس كلها خنة كل واب قاعد قرنيثو وكلها ناشدين أنجح كيبع كزوني بيتك لازم تعب قرنيثو
ليه ديو خمية سالفول ده طبعا لك يا ذن
لم بقيري but Kassab Valley ضقع when خشمن 5 years old هذا مشريلي مدرسة يعني يوم قمايو لك زوال ستوري قاعد بابي كزوال خشكة والليلة so زي الستوري worry زي خيرب قاعد مش متصلة دوي تامو خيرب قاعد كمان بابا هاي بصلة قيلي يروقه كان ميل محكوية no I'm sorry كمان قي أي بصلة إلى سموقه كان ميل محكوية كان كماثة بصلة بيثو كاو يروقه بنيو ماثا كل refrigeration دي ويب تلقو so من خيومه هاي بصلة دي سموقه بايش يروقه
يعني وقت ثلاجة ديخة
لا ديخة that's when بس تلقى that's when
بس تلقى
that's refrigeration
لا ثلاثة يا
أنا شولي بصل وأخويوي الكل مشي مسموقه.
يا.
So بحبي كم فهملي يعني أتبصل أكتك مع البيت لك ليه بمسمى خلود من الدارة يومه بشي يروقه. لخلي بصله خشعت لخلي تشوف بصله. لكن هم رندا هم خريوة لا لكن وأنا عمري خمشن.
سوكت محولي ويعني لخس ريوا يعني أقرن وعمل دان اللي جها ولا الله وقت عليه. سنتين عم طوبية لأمريكا بعدين يمخ أنا محاسنة ليلة سو دخلي على بعدين دخل مع ثيال لأمريكا
كلها جور ناشدين كثير الخذي
قمية كاتب تجنيك
مثل ولا بارة
بالضبط
وكاتب بلخي حصي خاصة بارة مش طويلة مش التلكيبة ما أقدر سمد لا بارة تزوني تكت كما ثالا أنجا خير كل هذا خواوة هلا كاتب بالي هم خاد الثيلة متبخته هم خا كاتب بالي
نعم سوم شدار بطلع ثيلة هم ثيلة ناش تجانا ثيلة لا ثيلة ناش خلنا ما
لا أثوى كبير ناش ما كاتب بالي أثوى خنت لكم نايا مي بس لثوى أجاية كبيرة most like wow بس إنشو أمانجور مث كد يرخب داتا ثلاثة خمسة وما كذي وابقى تلكيب إشمل يعني جمعي ناشة وكلك بيشي لا صدق خمسة كلها داتا إما خنة مثل لكي ليه داتا الخذي
نعم
لكي دي دخل بزالة لكي دي قرايو دوار مندي سو كسبري والماث أثو خاتك كاد قرايو
نبل ولا ما يدخل
that's right
يا مشاتو آدم طيلة لأمريكا
يمي
نعم
I'm sorry يمي طيلة بقاود 31
1931
yeah
okay
31
عم طبيعي مشروع لبقاو الشولندية ستور زورة دخل ميروخ هذه بعدين دخل مطاور على الشولندية يعني how we develop prove his business to grow up the business ما هو ضمن الشولان أخنا
well قميثه هربطخ بقاعد ستور كبير وخد بيثه
نعم
جايو من نشواثه
نعم
كبير نشر بس إيمن ثلا عم واثي
نعم
هيك بخيوة بخيوة مشيمت بابي إمه وبيلبي شولي هيك بزالا بخي بستور خنو وبابي بتحول شريكة أمي وما قد لبلا ونقويرة ستورك مزابنة ليا كمية ودتلي
يعني عم واثق ثلا عزبة لو أقويرة بس ماني عم واثق
بس تري واقويرة يعني كله خن لو أقويرة
ما عم واثق أنا
شو من بابي وثوال خديسة كلي وثلاثة مناثة وثمانية منونة ويمي ثواله 8 اخواثه I'm sorry 8 sisters and 3 brothers both families had 11 and 11 من يوماتها لثوة television لثوة radio لثوة جمدي ما
بدي بركة واو عدل يا محكيته كل شيء مشغولين خلينا من ده.
ما بدودي لك
Yeah.
برخي لك ودي تشوف لك زاد مدرسة ما بدودي.
مايك so يعني ثنا عم مواثق شولان دي زد لا وعدي يظهر انه ثلوخن بيث البيتش وكبيرة الكبناك محكة بقميثك بعد ويكند كاثاو جابت عم طبيعي البيث دي يوخن. So مدخو يعني what was a good time and do you كاثب بالو خذ من دي يعني تخرج.
كاثب بالي كاس ليك أثبت دث بالو كل ويا أخواره. It was a yacht club يعني ناشك هذا نادي ويا ونات كلها ناشك ما ثاوى بوت دي وكخليوة تامو بوت دي دارالو قال مايو يمن بابي كمزاونة وثوا أربع تلك بناي أمي خمسة واوا وكم قصيدة كل تكل تبان بثواثة تامو بابي شغله أطلعت وبيث بقاوي بيث رابع كل شوية.
نعم.
So بيث رابع يمن يبقى مايو ناشب داتا خزالوغن وكود شبثو خوشابو ناشب داثاو إسري ثلاثي أربي منك بشي وتامو ودمرو هذا البنيو ماثا و best years of my life يعني كلش كبير من نسل تامو ثوا بوت تام ماري ثوا على بوت كاث بالي كملوا بلي دكتور واتر سكي و but كل ليلة تامو ويو حفلة كل ليلة بارتي ويمي بشوت 30 ناشر 40 ناشر بس ما لبلي من داي يعني ما قد ديو كلن بغض هذا بيش بتاو خايلو ولما هذا لبلي يعني من كلنا شواث دين كل خوشابة كزواها ليك وكخلي متخندخن ومحكمة خندخن يدي خندخن لبلي خمن دي يعني ما يتبشتوا من دايدن بس كلها نشواثه دخلي بغداد وخزا خندخن
جميع مشاركة بغداد. نعم.
So ولدها أنا يالي كنت خشابه كاثا جيبن البيثو دخلي كماثا يلي ونشي وكل كاو بغداد هاد كل خشابه هاي كم يلبنا من ليك من كاثا بالي كلها ناشا كاثا وأجايو بداثا مثل بساخة مايو وكلش بسيخة. لكن يمن مثل بابي كم سبنن بيثو وكم ثقيله بنا خنو بس وني بيثو بدو بيشتو يمي ويمي اشلب قاعد ليك والمثله ودا بيثو يهرد التامه وخاتي لبقاوه بس ما بري التامه قاعد كاس ليك إذ مش لولو قارن ويلو بيتش أنا قارن ويدو بيتش من كلها أني مش إنشاء لا تقول كلك إيشي تعمل بغداد خبيث بطل خنو
بيش لا كلها
بيش لا yes.
So يعني was the create خليوا nice memories in the camera.
Well,
the community was Zora.
Zora وكلك أني وخنده I mean كاثب بالي من خاب داثة يالب شولة كي باث ستار كل ناش ديون كل من جيبي كوي البادة عين خنده ويقع لثوة فايدة لثوة نود لثوة شمدي بس تناثة.
نعم.
ما قد كاثب بالي ما قد بابي ولا بادة تناشي ناشي ولا بادة بابي شو ناش لخسارة شمدي كل مني ناش ولا بتناثة وناش مايث تبادة جيبة تدخلنا يليك يويلا so I خمني لبلي يعني تناثة ما قالوا important وناش دين وعبشتهم كله بن مسار يمناشي ولا تناثة وشغل إيذا كماله كاثب بالي أنا وخوني وبابي زلن البنك إجا واو ديترويت بانك اند تراست وخو أثوال 3 ستارات أثوال شولد خليو وكيبوخ تعرف كل من دي بغداد وشغل لون من بنك so زلن تامك مخل كل من دي دن كاميرا oh that's fine give a shakl line of credit for $200,000. So while in Pata, the wheel to Nashadian, that storat, can then la Pata. Can we meet the any waracha, then Pata did to give it Nashad. Come in, well, let the chuwaracha. Come in, me let the chuwaracha. Promissory note, chattel mortgage. Chattel mortgage was a security agreement. I banker camera, دخلت chuwaracha. دخل كيوت بعد التناشي. كامل well كل تلفون كي باخم شامل بريارة كيو خلاط لي يمن أتا كيويلا. لا تخد chuwaracha. No chuwaracha. ما خسر بعد. شو من دي؟ Camera, Chashwan Ayat Yewit, the worst businessman in the world. Come look here when the Chumandi. Put them in Tama, come on, Mesduchla Shilin, live in Shalom Padaman Bank. So, I'm Hakelim Medachoni Shakar, who Babi come in the Bible as I'm in Shakla Hodaka Menashe, that in Pada Gebate, it's a bank in Denoch Pada.
مايك بث بدون مقاطعة ما قوي عمره بث وقد يكون محكوي.
When we were 19 years old.
Okay.
Babi were b'shulat chaya without World War II. Choni zil harap wana zora wana. So shulat chaya kam sayible. Bas even puldi madrasa b'shatat khamshi. Kam sharan shulat chaya gacharto.
نعم.
So shulat were b'ziyado but klasim in Pata.
نعم.
So min hadal zil in the bank to shagluch Pata. Anyway. So come into Babi Khoni come in لازم زن تناشدين بقول كتويلا وراق ما قدرت نجيبه Babi كامل أوه إيه بو عندك كودن هذا so خوني أنا زلنا نجيب الكلية كما في مخلا يعني بنكي بوراق تشتغلوا بهذا مني
نعم
نثوالن خمشان من خا كامل كثولة بخمشان نثوالي أب من خنا كامل كثولة بصرابية لكن خايسلا
تنيتها
إيه تنيتها وكلها كثولة وراقة بس كمنونا كي من كل من دي عدل من ثوالن كثوانة وقوا باريس كم ثويلة كل عدل زلي تاي بانكر شمين مستر سمايث ولك ناشن كل مري مستر سمايث كي بد وراقة من كاستمرز دي اندت ان باري جيبي عين وراقة كامر دخل له جيبي يرويلي باري ودرخل له وكي بيقول وراقة بطل كميوتا باري كامل لك مهم من دخ شنو عشان دي شنو عشان لك عوض هذا خيب كتويلا ولا كمان التنفارق جاي قال لك كتويلا كمان كيما وراق كما ويلي لكن ما ودي تشوف بعد زلان أصرش إنه إذا بشقوا بعد من بنك من كل شيء ويبقى تناثو إيده بس بنيو ماثو هذا قد هو شلو
نعم
وشو ناسو الخاسر وجمدي ترجو ناشو
أي كثير من ثقة تلك بنايدي لا خاف عملي وثقة
حقوت
كلنا خايخ يعني عندنا نخذ قيمة وباشفة ولده هذا خيو تعيد بعيانه بس مايك أخواته خامنة يزدل العسكرية ميرخ شاكر
شاكر
يعني خدم اللي قاود World War II
World War II
هيك قاود Europe or
لا
بكوريا
لا آخر United States
United States
he was in the Air Force and he was a mechanic in the Air Force and he was lucky enough he didn't have to go overseas. He spent 4.5 years in the Air Force.
Okay.
And he got out in 1945 after the war. Okay. But I had 3 sisters. They all worked in the grocery store. And then after World War II, in about 1950-51, when all the Chaldeans started to come to Detroit, that's when my one sister, Margaret, married Salim Sarafo, who was highly educated, came here, but couldn't get a job because he wasn't, wasn't educated here. So he ended up in the grocery business, very successful. My other sister, Vicky, married Buddy Achu, and he was an engineer, college graduate, but he couldn't get a job either. He went into the grocery business, highly successful. My other sister married Mike Gabara, whose family had been here before World War II, and we were neighbors, and he was also in the grocery business. So almost all the Chaldeans were in the grocery business, and we didn't get back in the milk business until 1950, and we also always owned stores and always was in the grocery and milk business for quite a long time. But almost all the Chaldeans who came after World War II highly educated, and not one of them could get a job because the law was you had to be here 5 years a citizen and you had to be recertified in your profession. It was very difficult for them. But in a way, it was a blessing because they all did very well.
Mike, you went to the bank to borrow the money because you have some kind of vision to develop the business.
Yes, of course, yes.
And it looked like your father was a visionary, and he really could see the opportunity. How you describe your father?
My father was a very hard worker, but all the Chaldeans were hard workers, all of them. They had no choice because it was a matter of survival. They had no choice. They couldn't do anything else. You know, when you come here poor and you're given an opportunity, you take advantage of it. And they were smart enough, all of these Chaldeans, to know that we came to this country, we have an opportunity, and by working hard. My father-in-law, Shamasha Yusuf Dukhu, he used to work for BP, British Petroleum, in Kirkuk. And he was wealthy, he had a good job, number 2. He couldn't be number 1 because he was a Christian. And he had a home with chauffeurs and maids. But because of lack of economic and religious freedom, he decided he wanted to come here to this country. And I remember he bought a very small store on Beaubien Street in Detroit, very small. And that man, he was alone. His wife and his 2 children, my wife now and his son, were both in Iraq. As a matter of fact, in Baghdad. And he worked here for 2 solid years in his grocery store, opening and closing 7 days a week. You know, and I used to deliver milk to him, and I was amazed at how, you know, determined they were. And his determination was caused by the fact that he wanted to make some money to bring his family, and he did. And he worked very hard and kept, you know, sold his grocery store and bought another one, sold that one, bought another one, you know, and did very well in life here, very well. And I know that in the evenings when we used to sit together, his number 1 comment was, you know, thank God for this country, you know, because we have the opportunity. They would never have that opportunity in Iraq, primarily because of religion. When you work hard, you also play hard, okay? So when they worked hard, they had to have a method of relaxation. Their relaxation was they would get together just like we do now, and in the evenings when were not working, or even in the afternoons, early afternoons usually, because they'd go back to work in the evenings. They'd get together at a home every day, 7 days, except Sundays. It was family day. They would all get together in a home and sit there and drink. And I remember they would all have mezza. I never understood that, you know, until later in life, but they always had kebab or they had vegetables or fruit and when they were drinking. I just thought they were hungry, but in reality, they were coating their stomachs so they can drink more so they don't get drunk, okay? I didn't know the reason for it. They were much smarter than I was. And then after they do all that, they go back to work. It always amazed me. But besides getting together, then playing cards was the national pastime. It was Kankan didn't exist then. It was poker or wishliana. Okay, wishliana was very heavy in those days. But then at the summertime, they would go to Belle Isle, and they'd make barbecue and stay up all night, and then go to work. I used to go there with them because there was nobody at home, and literally sleep on the ground with a blanket over me, you know, and then get up in the morning and go home, wash, and go to work, or else it was on a weekend, I didn't have to go to school. And then later on, as we moved further to the suburbs, then it was Palmer Park. And Palmer Park in the summertime, every night, Chaldeans, 20, 30, 50, 100, then became 200. And they'd go there and picnic and play cards and had a good time. It was almost to the point where Palmer Park became Chaldean Park. It was really amazing. But, you know, the bottom line was, and they waited until their sons and daughters got old enough so they could go to work, so they could relax. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, my father worked very hard, and especially after World War II, because I was still in school and very young. But the minute my brother got home, and I graduated from high school, yallah, I remember the day I got out of high school, he brought me over, he took the money out of his pocket and took the keys from the store. I was already working in the store. I didn't understand that. What he meant was that he was going to take it easier and I'm going to work harder. Okay? But I disappointed him. I told him I'm not going to work in the store. I'm going in the milk business. And he almost crucified me. We got a good business. Take the business. We built it for you. What am I working for? I'm working for you. As Bob, I don't like the grocery store. I'm going in the milk business. So what happened is, my father threw me out of the house. He says, don't come back because you're not listening to me. And you know, you're not part of the family
because
anymore.
you cannot see the opportunity in the milk business.
Well, Bayasha, كبير ناشب Bayasha gave it a bit. كلها بخاله Bayasha Tamon. So Zilli, I made a deal with Wilson Creamery, and my father was buying milk from another company called Family Creamery.
Yeah, Mike, let's take it one step back.
Go ahead.
How did you get the idea to go to the milk business? And
Who?
let's say you.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
working in the store. You were going.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were helping your
Yeah.
dad in the store.
Yeah. Well,
And you were going to school in the same time.
Yeah.
And you were almost 19, 20 years old maybe
Yeah.
now at this time, right?
we-
when
we-
you finished high school.
we could be here for hours if I got to give you all that detail.
But how did you get the idea?
In 1940,
Yeah.
we had a gentleman, my cousin, my mother's nephew. His name was Louis Kirker. He was a successful businessman. He was a pilot and a very, very smart guy. He used to buy, sell used things, and he lived in our home. And he was the one who said, I'm going to go in the milk business, because there was a lot of Chaldean stores, and he was going to go in the milk business. Well, he didn't have the temperament to handle the stores, the people. You know, when you're friends, but the minute you go in there and you want to talk business, they become different. You know, they want to negotiate, they want to bargain, they want this, they want that. He couldn't handle it, you know. So my father took over the business. Believe it or not, from 1941 until 1944, my father was working in the store, my brother was in the army, my sister was working in the store, I was going to school, and my father had one milk truck. And he had a driver that was what we call 4F, which means he wasn't qualified to go into the army. He used to drive the truck, but he was also a drunk. So he'd get drunk, and sometimes he wouldn't show up for work. Well, in those days, we used to deliver milk 7 days a week. So my father would call me, Brony, and I would never forget his name, D. Brown. Khamar D. Brown didn't show up, he's drunk again. You got to come right around the milk truck.
Mike has got to take her out.
Yeah. I started when I was 12 years old. I go find a factory worker that just got off, working in the plants, and I'd give him $10 to drive the truck, and I literally would go from store to store and deliver the milk. And I remember Yelda Soroki, when I used to deliver to his store, and he'd see me. He could never believe it. He used to say, "My brother, Ahmar, Ilarawai Gaharto."
أنت سايق غير أو لك يا دي براون.
I'm lazim pelchet. He used to be amazed that with 12 years old, I used to drive the milk truck. Not drive it, but I used to go beyond the milk truck and deliver milk.
ما قوي عمرك معك يا
12.
12.
Yeah,
قلت لك يعني كزاولك شغلته كم زمن الملك تستورات.
yeah.
هذه. So زلخ الويلسون company do the deal in
Oh,
May.
yeah, that was 1950.
19. Okay.
So my father, at that time, we were selling Family Creamy milk when he was in business. And then most of the Chaldeans, when he went out of business, were buying from Family Creamery also, because they got relationship, and they were Lebanese people. Very nice, two partners, very nice family, good people, and they owned a dairy. We used to buy from them. Well, in those days, if somebody got drunk and got a ticket, they used to take care of it. Well, you know, our people in those days, they worked hard, they played hard, and they drank hard, okay? So they always used to get in trouble, and this gentleman, I won't mention his name because we're going to be on video here, although he's dead. And yeah, and he used to fix all the tickets. So my father said to me, at least go buy milk from Family Creamery. You know, he says, because these people were good people, they helped us a lot, we've been doing business with them for over 10 years. I said, no, Dad, I said, I'm not going to do business with them. He says, they're not aggressive enough. Now remember, the war has been over for 5 years. When I come home, even though he threw me out of the house, but I still came home, I would talk to him, but he would answer by talking to my mother, and my mother, of course I could hear him. Yeah. He wouldn't talk to me directly. Very stubborn. You know? Yeah, yeah. So one day he said to me, yeah, well, one day he said to me, he says, Naima, my mother, Imer te Bronach, given death and ummi to Family Creamery, to Chazat, Merwat at Family Creamery. Come in, okay, Baba Bsen. Then I've got car, two and a half, I've got what? 2 partners, about 2 desks, same. One here, one here. Two on tamo.
And the Family Creamery, the Lebanese do zone to
yeah, yes. Okay. So, I nasha camera, Brony, eigenlijk zone het Khayamanan, Brother Shula, Mochen, Honoch, Amawatho, Kuloch, and Akulan Shin the Kay.
Babu Kiltio Mochen.
Yeah, Bab Babil Tio. Come Damun Kay. Mithi, a quart of milk. Come, bring me a quart of milk. The quart of milk was in a paper container, but it had wax on the outside because that's the way it was in those days, instead of plastic like today. So he brings the milk. I says, this is the reason why I don't do business with you. He says, what's wrong with it? I says, the color is beautiful. You got a picture of a baby on there, but read the side panel of the carton. He reads it and it says, buy U.S. war bonds and stamps. I said, that's the problem. The war was over.
What was it saying?
Buy U.S. war bonds and stamps. During the war, we would buy stamps and war bonds to finance the war.
Okay.
The carton had not been changed. The war was over for 5 years. Same carton, never changed. I said, that's the reason I can't do business with you. I was telling him that he was not aggressive. When he read the carton, the side of the carton, he got up, he shook my hands, and he says, good luck to you. Didn't say another word. In the interim, while I was in the business going from store to try and sell milk, without my father's permission, nobody would buy from me. My store that I worked in, my father's store, I couldn't sell them. My brother, I couldn't sell. My uncles, I couldn't sell. I just had a few other people that I just a few, and I was ready to go broke, to tell you the truth. So after that day, when my father told my uncles, he goes like this, it's okay, go ahead, buy from him. Thank God, then I got some business.
But Mike, you started this, how old were you that time?
I was 17.
17 years old.
Yeah.
You went and registered the company, sure, you know, and you got a warehouse. How much was your investment that time, money in that business?
My investment was $456. And you know what it was? During World War II, I used to buy 10-cent stamps, war stamps.
Yeah.
I saved them up with the interest. That's how much money I had in the bank. And that's all I started with.
So you buy, like, you were a distributor,
Yes.
buy from a factory or wholesaler?
Right. Yes, I was a distributor. I had an old truck, 1941 Dodge. Used to break down so much it was unbelievable. And I ran the truck myself.
And in this time you تخلص high school?
Yes, I just finished high school.
Just finished high school.
Yeah. I graduated from high school in June, and in July 1950 I went in the milk business.
Hey. And دام شو له شو له بعده عزبت لقوارة.
No.
لنادخ؟
Yes.
So milk company شو له برواية قصة إن عمو واثق بزوانة منه بعدين دخكم خازيلة بابا خشوا له خرويلة دخكم خازيلة ثمندي أو يعني دخ بصخلة.
So even غزالي ويا بصيخة.
يمكن شو له محكو يبغى
Yeah. Shimmet company can bedlindo.
Okay.
To Tom, George, and Sons dairy يعني
Yeah.
شمت بابي وسانز يعني اخواني وانا
نعم.
هم انا بخن ولا بس it's okay ان الناس دي لازم بخو مخاطر عائله you
نعم.
know.
That's good.
So
خوش مي example.
even كل من even بخون بقعد ستور بابي وهم اخواني اتوالد ستور دي كل ليله كانت اخذ البيت بارك يوخ بابي
نعم.
وخوخ كلها لا فرق you know أنا شاقل مركيبة ناوك شاقل مركيبة بابي مركيبة كلهم هو عائلة وأنجح أخواني من أنا زلي العسكرية بقعد 1952 وداري أخواني بش الشركة أمي ومن دقيقة 1970 أثوالا one checkbook أثوى فرق بيناتنا من ديك لازم واله you know وكل من دي كلش لندو بس you know بابي وبسيخه he was proud you know what I mean
نعم.
مت شولانه وبزيادة you know كل شاتو
It's a good story.
yeah
كل شريك عليه ديال بخ من محياه. So خلصتوا هاي سكول ممكن له مدرسة بعدين؟
لا.
يعني هاي كولج من دي.
well I was drafted into the army in 1952
Okay.
and that's when I turned my business over to my brother to manage it for me. And then when I was in the army, he started the ice cream business. So when I got back in 54, my dad got sick with cancer. So he sold half the store to my uncle, Naeem. And my brother had two grocery stores, and he was still running the dairy business for me. So because the business was going smoothly, I went to college at University of Detroit. But while I was going to college, I was selling milk. I was working in the store cutting meat. And it got to be too much, you know, so I quit school. And then later on, I quit going to the store because the dairy business was expanding so dramatically. Because, you know, in those days, when our people came, they couldn't borrow from banks. So we had to finance them. We had to get a loan of money, you know. And that was just a tradition that my father started because I remember when our people came from the old country, you know, they used to come to our home. I mean, one day I had 22 people sleeping on the floor, believe me, in blankets and sleeping bags and pillows. A plane had just come in. They had no place to go. And my father probably sponsored hundreds and hundreds of people to come to this country. In those days, you had to have a sponsor. And when you had a sponsor, you signed a document where you become financially liable for that immigrant. They couldn't go to the state and get money for welfare, which was okay. Because when our people came, we put them to work right away. And they earned money. And when they earned money, they got their own apartments. And a lot of people stayed in their relatives' homes. We had a lot of people staying in my home, my cousins, everybody, until they got on their feet. But, you know, that's something that's very important because it showed unity in family life. That doesn't exist today like it was before. Now, although, you know, the refugees that are coming now, all of them go to their relatives' homes or their sponsors, and they take good care of them. So it's still done to an extent, but not like it used to be. Before, everybody was one family. It's only natural because as we progress and everybody becomes more educated, more independent, it's only natural.
Okay. داو شولان رندا وكل من دي رندا خلص لك مدرسة بيش لوقت دقوارة هيك مخاستا نجات.
Well, placha started baba.
Oh, okay. كم أدخل يا طلي.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, كم زمنا خلية بابا وعك بخاب قاعد ستور. بس كم كان غازن التام إيمن ناشا كاثاوة من تلكيبة.
نعم.
كلنا عشرين كزوا على البيت خازوا جبنا شوثي. كاتب بالي خيوم بالي كامل زين زالي خازن يوسف دخو بختي ويالث كان ثلا. وأنا ونزور لطوالي كار لك مرشنو. سو كم شاقل يمي من ستور زلن جيبي البيت لو دبنا قريبة وياه كلن
ما مايك عمره هيجا.
20. I'm sorry. No, what am I talking? Yeah, it was in the 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. But I since said I shouldn't have a car, but
No.
we only had like 1 or 2 cars for the whole family because it was too expensive. But so I went with my father, and we went to Tobiah Corey's home. This was his father, brother-in-law. Tom Corey's wife, Habuba, was his sister. So they were staying there, you know. And so we went there and we met, and that's how I met my wife for the first time. But she was younger than me, and I didn't pay any attention. But then later on, you know, when I used to deliver milk, I used to go to the store, and that's how I met her. And then we formed between Raymond Achu and myself, we formed the Chaldean Youth Club. And we did that for the purpose of bringing all the young Chaldean children together so we can go to dances and have affairs, because the parents in those days didn't allow the girls to go out by themselves. You know, that was impossible. If you took out a Chaldean girl, you better marry her, you know. So we formed this youth club so that we can all meet each other. And it worked out well, because as a result of it, I married my wife, and many other boys married the other, you know, Chaldean girls. And that worked out real well.
But if you look أنا وتخزي I've got a story يعني وتبيع.
دمنا عدل لثوالي أنا بس قشون I come rally أنا دالي أنا خب قاو. ولكن إذا نوا.
خوش من ديواه الثلاث كذا هم يا جواد.
إن بقيت بدمالك أنا كذا نزين قوين والك إيمنكم خازن نخ. What are you talking about? ما نحكي هذا.
So let's نحكي خناوة اليوث كلاب كالدين يوث كلاب. يعني أي خمندي خلية يعني تجمعت وناشي كله بغداد وهذه. من هو من دان يوث كلاب قمايد مشروع ولا أخذ تخرجتن. يعني كي بخن محكو خناوة الكلابز دي عند خمسة برواية بقعد community.
Raymond Achu, Babe Joe Achuwewo. Athwa Raymond or Richie Nager, Babe were Jack Nager. Athwa Freddie Nager, George Nager's father. Athwa the Maddies, Tom Maddy's sons, George and Joey. And there was Raul Dunhow was involved. Well, truthfully, all the young Chaldeans, all of them were part of the youth club.
So this is the beginning of the social clubs in the Chaldean community.
Yes.
بث حالا يعني ثولوخ إيتا بريثا؟
No.
بث وإيتا معه. أوكي هم بعد أخذ زلوخ إيتا مارونين سريان.
No, إيجا كزان أمريكان.
أمريكان كزان.
كلهم شنيلن من ديترويت شنيلن براي. So كلهم كزوالن كلا إيتا واثا خنة. Like for example, I went to Blessed Sacrament Cathedral for 13 years. You know, maybe even longer, maybe even longer than that, until we moved. But everybody went to the church in their parish, wherever they lived,
okay.
Because we didn't have our own church.
مشروع اليوث كلاب آخر وبعدين قلت لي لهم قاشة تخرج كثير قاشة يوم فولف بقعد إيه تقميث دود لهم or family youth or عم طبيعة.
لا قاشة خلنا قام فاذر بي داويد لك تخرج شمي دهب دات اللي بس Father B. Dawid, I mean, out there, he was young, aggressive, and he's the one who started Mother of God Church on Hamilton.
Okay.
He bought a existing church and converted, you know, to a regular Catholic church.
You grew up Chaldean church or American church?
No, Chaldean church.
Chaldean church. من وين قاشة؟
Father B. Dawid.
So من ثوالخ لواش من واو بيجا ولواشياثا.
Oh.
لواشة. The girls they walk in the wedding and boys.
The only thing I remember was that I invited, and this was 1959. I was going to get married the year before, but my father passed away, so I had to wait a year. I invited every.
You married after your father passed away?
Yeah, we were going to marry before, but he passed away, so I had to wait 1 year. We got married in 1959. I invited every single Chaldean I knew. I had 1,500 people at my wedding. We couldn't find a hall big enough, so I rented a hall called Dairyman's Hall on 2nd Avenue in Highland Park. I had to bring my own waiters, my own cooks, our own whiskey, and it was terrible. It was unbelievable. I mean, 1,500 people squashed in this place, and there was no organization. And I remember that we ran out of whiskey. We had 10 cases of whiskey and we ran out.
With,
you know,
وكل شتاي يدعون مايك.
No, man, I couldn't believe it. So I went to Joe Achu, used to call him Uncle Joe because my father and him were very close. I said, Uncle Joe, that tin whiskey. His son Raymond, who was a good friend of mine, very, very close friend. He gave him the keys. He goes to the store, picks up 2 more cases. I'm trying to figure out 10 cases, 120 bottles, 1,500 people. We got kids, we got women that don't drink. Everybody had to drink a half a bottle. Something's wrong. Well, I got suspicious, and I told my brother and a few other boys, I says, go out in the back and check the garbage.
Okay.
They went out there, and they found 4 cases of whiskey in the garbage. I was so mad.
مايك مشروع الأخر آخر قاود يوث كلاب بعدين ساوثفيلد مانر يعني مشروع لا بيوالي من قام ساوثفيلد مانر إثوا يعني association Iraqi Chaldean
Yes.
association هذه you were involved, your business was flourishing and growing up and really working very hard for it. When they started Southfield Manor, how that started? And I'm sure you were one of the early pioneers that helped in it to get it.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't because I was busy working, and
Okay.
we had my brother-in-laws and my uncles and my cousins. They were all members, and there's only a few of them that started the whole club. Some of the Sarafas, Sesi, Achus, a few others, and they built the club where it was on Telegraph Road, and I wasn't involved in the beginning. I attended a couple of meetings before then and advised them as to what they should do, but they were so stuck on a small budget.
Okay.
When I told them they have to build a basement for the members, and the upstairs would be the banquet for to generate a profit, they didn't do that. So just before they finished it, they one day, Yelda Soroki, Joe Achu, Salim Sarafa came to me and said, we want you to come to the church hall with us. I said, okay, Mother God Church. So I went there, and Yusuf Najir says, Hali khamsot ثلاثة ديارة. أنا خصيصي دخله أي حقتي خالله. So I gave him $35. So we sat there, and they're taking elections. And there was 51 people there, and all of a sudden my name come up, and I got 50 votes out of 51. I was the new president of the Chaldean Iraqi Association, and that was in 1987. I'll never forget it. I said, what am I doing here? What's going on here? Oh, it's nothing. You don't have to do anything. Just don't worry about a thing. It's just a name only.
87 or 78?
No, 87.
87.
The club opened in 89.
Okay.
But the club was already built, most of it.
Okay.
So Jimmy Junda takes me over there. He was in construction, and Mike Neela was the architect. I look at this building, and I said, well, this doesn't make sense. It's too small. I remember they were going to build it. I was involved initially, but they threw me out. Didn't throw me out, but they didn't listen to what I had to say, so I left. And I said, it's too small. There's no place for the members to play cards, not to eat, to do anything. And big arguments back and forth, and I got frustrated, and I said, listen, you know what, and with all due respect to the old-timers, they had a lot of money, they were on the board of directors, we'd sit for 6 hours in a meeting, and after they left, nobody did anything. So I took my secretary, Bernie, who you know here, I moved my office over there from my other office. I was on 10 Mile Road, and I tore out the front of the building, put in an additional bigger back room, and took the front out and made the dining room the way it was. There was no dining room there. It was a chechana.
Yeah.
And everybody was going crazy. The budget was $1 million. I spent $1.6 million.
And كم دار التامين جابوا.
No. We collected the money from the community,
بعدين
but I gave plenty. Believe me, I gave plenty. You're right. But you know what? It was the best thing we ever did, because now we had a beautiful club.
Yes.
The women can come without being escorted. The men weren't concerned about when the women went there because it was a private club. And it was beautiful. It was very nice, you know, and it was very successful. We had a lot of good weddings there. And from that, you know, we bought Shenandoah. And that was paid for also in time. And today we got a beautiful facility. It's just normal progress. But it was, believe me, we had so many good people that were working hard. I never forget one man, Isam Yeldu. This man worked at Southfield Manor, doing all the repairs and work and everything. Shenandoah he did. And you know what? Always quiet, never said a word. Didn't want any credit for it. But I used to observe him. And he's very mild, kind, you know, graceful man. But, you know, but he was just an example of many people who put a lot of work into it because they wanted to create something that was enhancing the Chaldean community. And Southfield Manor, in my opinion, was the real start of the social aspect, you know. And today we have Shenandoah, which is magnificent. And 2 years from now, 5 years from now, we'll have something else, you know.
Mike, Shenandoah Club, it's having some difficult time financing, and I'm sure this is only stages of running. It's just like a business. Where do you think that's going to go, in your opinion? How you see that taking these things is going to be solved? Or do you have any things that you recommend that we should take different aspect in Shenandoah?
Well, I can tell you this, and this is my personal comment. Shenandoah is not going anyplace. This is the pillar of our community. This is something that we're very proud of. This is something that we have to maintain, and we will. And we'll get out of it. We will do it. We have an awful lot of good people that are working hard to take care of the financial issues. And they will be taken care of because we have lenders that are reasonable, and we have people in the community that are reasonable. And I know we'll get together very shortly and resolve the issue. I will almost guarantee it, because nobody's going to let this thing fall to the wayside. It just doesn't make any sense. Common sense says, just like in the economic times that we're having today, that we must sit down and work things out. And that's what we're doing.
Mike, you sold the milk business, and that was like so many years you built it. That was your baby. How that it happened? You let it go.
I didn't. Well,
Was your intention to sell it, or just happened?
No, it wasn't my intention to sell at all. Very frankly, we had been in the milk business for 53 years, and we had my nephews working there and my sons. And what happened is that we outgrew our facilities. So I called this company, Dean Foods, and wanted to buy their facility, which was only a few miles away from ours, because it made sense. And they had just lost a major chain, and they were at half capacity. When I called Dallas, where their headquarters was, they said, yeah, we'd be interested, because they were losing money there. But they said, we have never seen it. They were a company that was growing very rapidly and buying dairies and consolidating, but you know, there were people who were doing it, and people I had talked to had never seen it. 3 weeks later, when they came to Livonia and saw the facility, they said, no, we don't want to sell it. It's too nice of a facility, but we have a plant in Illinois, a plant in Indiana. And I says, our business is in Michigan. I can't buy a plant over there when my customers are in Michigan. When they saw our operation, they were shocked, because they didn't realize how large we were. They thought we were just a very small company, but they didn't know who we were, because we were only local. So they offered to buy us out, and I said, we're not for sale. About 6 weeks later, they called again and said, we'd like to meet with you. And I said, what for? They said, well, we just want to talk to you. Well, where are you? We're at the Ritz-Carlton in Dearborn. So my son Rodney and I go there, and they're sitting in the boardroom, 9 people. And basically, they said, we want to buy you out. I said, we're not for sale. I said, what'd you call us here for? They said, well, listen to what we have to say. Well, as they say in the movies, we got a deal we couldn't refuse. When they made an offer of a formula, you know, for a purchase price, which was double than what would really the value of the company was. We didn't have a board meeting. We didn't consult with anybody. We just took the deal and shook hands. We didn't mean to sell, okay? But there's a time in life when the opportunity comes, you have to take advantage of it. And we did. First year was very difficult for all of us because losing something that you built from nothing, to a $150 million company was rather dramatic. But you get over it. There's other things in life. So I'm not as sorry as I was the first year. We adjust.
But Mike, now the company's gone, and you start involving a little bit, helping, doing a lot of things for our community. One of the things you're doing right now, actually involving, you took leadership roles overseeing the Chaldean Federation, and you involving doing a really excellent program, helping those that the Iraqi Christian that live in Iraq because of the violence and terror, the situation was going on overseas. You're really doing a lot to the community. Tell us how this is coming out and how this progress taking place helping people.
What happened is 4 years ago, or let's go back a little further. I've never been supportive of the Chaldean Federation because I didn't feel they were accomplishing anything, and I felt that it was a waste of time. So I never got involved. But one day I get a call from our Bishop Ibrahim, and he said he wants to see me. I said, okay. I says, I'll come over to the church. He says, no, I'm going to come to your office. This was on a Tuesday, and he was going to come on Thursday. I didn't sleep Tuesday night. I didn't sleep Wednesday night because he's never been to my office. And I said, he's going to come to my office. I said, it's got to be something big, And I was worried for 2 solid days. So he comes to my office and sits at my desk, my conference room desk. And he hands me a piece of paper, and he says, you are now chairman of the Chaldean Federation for the next 2 years. I says, Sayyidina, I says, what are you talking about? He says, I've asked for the resignation of all of the board of directors of the Federation, and I want you to take it over and bring it back to life. I said, I'm too busy. I can't do it no matter what. He says, are you going to refuse me? He put me in a position where I couldn't refuse him, And sometimes when people ask, you can't say no. I always remember the old timers, if they asked me for something, even if I didn't want to do it, I always said no. I always said yes as a matter of respect.
Yes.
Same thing here. I didn't want to do it, tell you the truth. But as a matter of respect for our bishop, I said yes. My opinion was to do nothing and let it die, within a few months. And I didn't do anything, and I almost let it die. And then one day, out of a clear blue sky, walks in Steve Garmo, the immigration attorney, and Joe Kassab, who's our executive director. And they said they've been volunteers with the Federation for many years, working with the immigrants and the refugees and immigration issues. And, they'd like to continue working and helping. I said, what are you talking about? Well, they told me the story about the refugees and how these people are suffering, and I didn't even know about it. When we started to investigate and found that hundreds of thousands of people, especially Iraqi Christians, have left Iraq and are sitting in other countries in poverty. No schools, no medical, no food, nothing. No money, no place, nothing to do. And no one can help them because they're basically illegal aliens, in these countries. I saw a tremendous need here and said to Joe and Steve that, we need to do something about this. The United States, through the United Nations, invaded Iraq. We all cheered when it happened, but it turned out to be a disaster. And where we thought it would help all of the country, it hurt the Christians more than anyone else. And something had to be done about it. Our immigration laws were antiquated. They were not sufficient to take care of the needs of the people that were sitting in limbo in these countries of refuge. So we started to investigate and working on it and found that, there was a real crisis in the world. And so we took it on as something that, when you get involved in something like this, your conscience bothers you to a point where you can't walk away from it. It's impossible. And if you see someone hurt, you're going to walk away?
Especially
You got to
with-
help them.
Especially you spoke how your family was.
Yeah.
People come in early times and
Yeah, well,
over
exactly.
staying in
I
your
mean-
house in your parents' home.
And especially in my case, where I learned how to speak Surat before I learned how to speak English, and I know the customs and traditions and all the stories, I feel like it is my country. You know what I mean? It's my father's and my brother's. How can I possibly ignore it? Well, I have to admit that if it happened in Russia or it happened in Iran or someplace else, I probably wouldn't have paid attention to it, but it was hitting home, you know. So we started to investigate and found that the job was much more difficult than we anticipated, simply because no one was doing anything. And this is my opinion, that our government was not willing to bring refugees to this country because it was an embarrassment, you know, to us, because of the fact that here we invade Iraq, the people are being persecuted, we have refugees, and now we're going to bring them into our own country when we invaded their country. So we had to make sure that we had to appeal not so much to the legal issues, but to the conscience of our people here, which we did. It was very, very difficult and very time-consuming. Fortunately for the volunteers that came to help when they realized what the mission was, without them we could have never done it. But everybody took on a tremendous responsibility. We contacted our senators, our representatives, and anyone else who would listen. And regardless of their denomination of religion or regardless of their political fields, everybody was concerned about the refugee issue, and no one was doing anything about it. So, very frankly, the one thing I commend the Federation and its people for what it did was to be able to force the United Nations and the State Department to start bringing our people to this country. And on August the 1st of 2007, we got our first plane load of people that came to the Detroit area, which consisted of over 65 people, and 63 out of the 65 were Chaldeans. Homeland Security did not want to approve anyone because they don't know who was a terrorist and who was a good person. And the problems with the names and the recordings was, everything was screwed up. We had to go through a lot of legislation, you know, to be able to change things so things can be done. Things are progressing. The people have come to the United States. Other people have gone to Sweden because now the whole world is aware of the refugee issues. France has taken some, England has taken some, Sweden has taken them. All over the world, they're taking on Chaldeans. We haven't taken in a lot here. We've only got about 30,000 people that have come, and we'll probably hit 50,000 by the end of this year. The majority of them have come to Detroit, but they can't all come here. So a lot of them are settling in other countries, which is fine, other cities and states. But it's a major issue. The government is taking care of the people when they come now, but what happens after 8 months or a year? Who's going to take care of them? We still have a big job to do. But the most important thing I think we accomplished was making the world aware that any time there's conflict and any time there's war, which in Iraq it was a war, that people are suffering, and it becomes the responsibility of the others that are not to at least help and take care of them. And that's what the message we're trying to send to the world is, let's help these destitute people. It's not their fault that they had to leave their country, and in some cases can't even go back simply because of their religious beliefs. So I feel that the Federation has been accomplishing a lot, primarily because of the people that are involved in what we're pursuing, but there's an awful lot of work to do, and very frankly, the refugee issue is not going to go away for a long, long time. It's going to be there. If and when we can get peace in Iraq and get the people to be able to live together, then maybe some of the Christians can go back and live in peace. But it's going to be very difficult, and I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. Again, that's my opinion.
very clear, Mike. Mike, with the Chaldean community here, they've been growing up in the businesses and the league lawyers, and there's doctors and a lot of profession. We do not see them in the politics. And we have some people around the politics. I'm sure Mike Sarafa was one of them, and Wadi Adada was another one. Some of them, they make it. Some of it, they didn't make it. And there's others that are trying. Did you see that the politics actually, they're running for the office to serve people, and that's the purpose of it. But they're not making it. Where do you see our future in the politics? You see they're going to have some people with over 100,000 Chaldean in some community. Would you see that we will have some future in politics or representative in a state level or federal level?
Absolutely, we will in time. But my personal feeling about politics in our community is this. We were not ready to go into politics.
Okay.
Our generation that came, the immigrants that came in the, and I'm going to say primarily in the 50s after World War II, because these are the people that were educated. They came here and had to work and work hard because they were not able to stay in their professions. If they had been part of the community, it might have been different. But basically, we isolated ourselves with our professions, which was primarily the commercial end of the entrepreneurship. But the children, okay, we wanted better for our children, so we educated them a little more than our ancestors were educated. Now that they're becoming professionals, like you said, attorneys, doctors, so forth, and many of the kids that are in school, and we're involved with Kassab, which is a group of Chaldean students in each of the universities. Many of them are taking up political science. They weren't doing that before. And until we become fully integrated into the American system, which takes generations, then the politics will come. You know, you look at politicians throughout the country and you look at some of the names. You've got Armenians, you've got Italians, you've got Arabs, you've got Lebanese, you've got Jordanians. But if you take a look, they've been here a long time. You know, they're highly educated and they're able to communicate with everyone. Chaldeans are still unknown to most of the United States, and very frankly, they were totally unknown until the Iraqi War. Not even the Gulf War.
And my question here: we have a community here. We have some representatives they run, and with the number of voters in our community, they go vote, and we cannot make one person to go there.
We're not enough. We're not big enough. We have to be able to convince non-Chaldeans that these people are qualified to represent them. They don't have that confidence yet. And that's why I discourage a lot of people from going into politics, simply because of the fact that they're not going to make it. They're not integrated into the political society yet, but our generations coming up now are. And we will see people.
We have judges now. We have 2 judges in California. We have a judge in Detroit. Did you involve in the campaign of Wadi Adada?
Yes.
He came all the way there, and he was speaking very high about the support of Tilkipnai or Chaldean in Detroit. And he mentioned that taking journey from there and how he make it. So do you remember the story, how he came in or what happened here in Detroit to help him out?
Oh, listen, I remember Nasser and, I remember Wadi, not Nasser, but George Achu, all these people who are highly educated that came from Iraq, from Baghdad, the colleges over there, the Jesuit colleges, came here, and a lot of them came here as students, okay, and then became working for the government in California at the Presidio of Monterey in the language school there for the Army. And that's how they ended up really starting in California, was because of that. And that was right after World War II. And these people were highly respected by our community because they were so well educated and handled themselves so well. But you know what? We were proud of the fact that finally, like you said, we had a Chaldean that was going to become a politician. We support him. What did was it was able to communicate with people. He had the knack of communicating with everyone, and they liked him because he knew how to handle himself. That's what politicians have to have, you know. A lot of people don't have that. But more important is the fact that, you know, in time, it's going to happen one at a time. We got 2 judges now, we're going to get another one, and we're going to have a representative, and then we're going to have senators. But it takes time. It takes time. All your ethnic nationalities, it took scores of years before they got involved in politics. So it'll come.
Mike, do you have any story you want to tell us or something before we end this? I mean, you remember about communities, about things, something unique in your that you remember or memories you want to leave for our community in this interview?
I've told you a few stories already, you know, that are always very memorable. But probably, you know, one of the most important stories was actually when I was in Korea, and I never forgot this. I'm here in Detroit, working in my father's store, running a dairy business, and I get drafted. I tried like hell to get out of the Army because I figured it's a waste of time. So anyway, I couldn't get out of it, and I had to do my duty. So I went to Arkansas and my basic training. I went to San Francisco for more training. Then I got shipped to Korea. And the Korean War was still on at that time. And I remember getting off the boat at Incheon with a pack on my back and a rifle, and they put me in a train with wooden seats in the middle of the night, and we drove in that train all night long. And I says, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? We get to our base, and we're up in the front lines. I didn't know we're in the front lines because it was dark. There was no place to sleep. And I literally slept on the ground, and the ground was cold. I remember it was February. It was so cold, it was unbelievable. Got up the next morning, and we're living in tents. And I literally almost went crazy, you know, saying, I got to get out of here. What kind of a life is this? It took me about a month to adjust. And then they put me as a forward observer in a small Piper Cub plane. And the officer who flew the plane and myself were the only ones in the plane. And we would go up and we would observe the artillery so that we would direct the artillery, which would shoot over our head, okay, onto the enemy, because in Korea it's all hills.
Okay.
The average time in the air was like 16 minutes. This has nothing to do with my climax, but my third trip, I got a new lieutenant just out of West Point, and he just had gotten there. He was a pilot. He was a big guy from Boston, talking big, you know, lieutenant out of West Point. And we get up in the plane, and he freezes. He can't control the plane anymore. And I'm not a pilot.
You know? In the air or in the ground?
In the air.
In the
air. and he can't talk. And the plane is flying, and I'm on the mic, you know, Mayday, Mayday. The pilot's frozen. He can't fly the plane. I don't know, what am I going to do?
Froze, froze in the air?
He froze, yeah, he froze. He got what the controls. He couldn't move. They says, hit him. I says, what? Hit him. Smash him in the face. I did. I hit him so hard, you know, that he finally woke up.
With the air, you're still in the air.
I'm still in the air. And they had to basically talk him down. I got down. This guy was big. I got so mad at him, I wanted to kill him. And as big as he was, he apologized to me 1,000 times. I said, I'm never going to go in the air with you again. I realized I was going to die. I said, I'm going to die. No question about it. So if I'm going to die, I'm going to make the best out of it. So I didn't care about the army. I didn't care about the rules. I decided to go into Seoul, which was the capital of Korea. I got in the back of a truck. These trucks, even though they have canopies in the back, I don't know how the dust gets in there, but when I got out of that plane 80 miles later, I was full of dust. I went to the PX, bought some toothpaste, some candy and things, and the guy kept saying, and I had a big jacket on with big pockets, and he kept saying, be careful, don't let those kids around you, don't let those kids around you. Kids came out, give me a nickel, give me a Hershey bar, give me this, give me. Within a matter of seconds, they cleaned out all my pockets and I didn't know it. Anyway, so I started, take me to the army bases that are here in Seoul. I go to the army base, my God, they got beds. They got movie projectors. They got a place to eat. We're eating and we're dumping our pans in the hot water and cleaning them and standing in line. I said, this is where I want to be. So I go back. All week long I'm thinking, I'm going to go back to Seoul. I'm going to find a way to get back there. I go back and I meet some people. No, on the way there, I stop at a Turkish camp. Now this is the United Nations. So if you're in the, with the United Nations there, any soldier can go to any camp and eat. Okay. The Turkish army was under U.S. rations. So we supplied them with all the food. So I go there, I didn't know they were Turks, I thought they were Arabs, and I'm saying, Kef is Saha, Shlonek, I didn't, nobody answers. That's what's wrong with these guys. So I'm eating, and then finally I see a guy, he looks at me and he says, you speak English? I says, yeah. He says, what do you want? I said, I came here to eat. He says, do you like butter? I says, why butter? He says, come on with me. Takes me in the back room, and must have 100 cases of canned butter. They don't eat butter. Yeah. Butter, So I says, no, I don't want no butter. So I look over there, I see baseball equipment. I says, what about that baseball equipment? He says, I don't even know what it is. He says, what is that? I says, baseball equipment. He says, they sent it to us, we don't know what it is. I says, will you give it to me?
And this guy is with the Turkish camp?
Turkish, yeah. He says, I'll give it to you, but I want a case of whiskey. I said, where am I going to get whiskey at? He says, go to the camp over here. So I go to the camp, and they have what they call an NCO club for non-commissioned officers, which I was one. Yeah. So I asked the guy, I want a case of whiskey. The guy says, what for? I said, never mind, I want a case of whiskey. He says, okay, mix it up. So he gave me, scotch, and he gave me some whiskey and some cognac, $12 for a case. I says, $12? He says, yeah, this bottle's 80 cents, this one's $1, this one's $1.20. It's about $12. I give him $12. I said, $12? I couldn't believe it. No taxes. Only the cost of the product. Everything is free in the Army. I take it back. He had so much equipment, I couldn't take it all. So I went back to my place, got a truck, came back and picked it all up. When I bought it back, now we're on the front lines. Our battalion has 3 different units, and we stayed up Saturday and Sunday, 2 days. We didn't do nothing and played baseball for 2 days. The general comes up to me, he says, God bless you, what you did for us. He gave me a Jeep, he gave me a driver, and he put me in a special Quonset all by myself. I went to Seoul, I exchanged ice cream for whiskey. I exchanged movies for whiskey. I exchanged clothes for whiskey. I didn't have a clothes. I had to go in the black market and get it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what it did, why it's a good story. I learned survival. I learned how to survive in a country that I couldn't stand, I hated, By the time I got through, everybody thought I was going to join the Army and stay in it the rest of my life.
You cannot wait to get out of it.
Oh, couldn't wait at all.
بس هيدا فرزنه مخ طيار the pilot. أنا كبير على لأنه كذا والرفيجي بقى على خيمة.
I'll tell you, I never forgot that. I'll tell you, when I think about it, Look, I'm still shaking. I'm not, I mean, I never was so scared in my life. Never.
I tell you my story, Mike, and
Go ahead.
the reason why I tell the story is your story. Um, you always you talking about shaking hands, and this is really true story. In 1982, I started a grocery store, and like everybody else was going to Uncle Mike. So I came in and I said, how much you need? I said, I need $20,000. He said, Brony, C-Sport, just no, old fashioned في الكيب شغله وإيده بزواله بس C-Sport قصة دودي ورقات. And it's true story. And was not even put any condition or anything. It just make it so easy for me that day. I will never forget that. I want to say thank you for this.
I appreciate that, Sam.
Thank you. I never forgot this, and we learned a lot from this how to help others and when they need us. And that was a good example you said. But there's one thing I want to ask you is you've been well known as a Chaldean or a godfather of the community. How did you feel about that?
Well, it's not my choice, of course.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of people look at the term Godfather as something as derogatory or negative. But I know that my people mean it in good, as a compliment, and I accept it as such. However, when it's told to people outside of the community, they look at it as something negative, like I'm a criminal. So I always have to be very careful. But truthfully, at my age now, I don't care. But I do appreciate the fact that it's a compliment, so I accept it as such. And don't misunderstand. I want the people to know that a lot of things we did was we started to, when we loaned money to people. We did it because our people couldn't borrow from the banks. There was no way for them to go into business. So and we felt that if we're in the dairy business, if we help them, they're going to help us. And outside of a very few, and we never ever asked anybody, you had to buy our milk, never. We just took it for granted that if they appreciated it, they would, and we always treated them fairly, and that's why we grew the way we did. If we hadn't, we'd have lost all the business, of course. But really, we didn't lose hardly any money in the first 30 years. It was with different generations that started, more risk involved and more entrepreneurs coming in and diversifying and going into businesses they didn't understand. The food business is a very solid business. We knew that a family runs that operation, we're going to get paid. We know that if the children take over that operation, they understand the business, we're going to get paid. It's the diversification, which is nothing wrong with, that's progress, that caused us to not be as successful in the lending business. We always lost money in it. But very frankly, our fathers did it to each other when they came to this country. That's how they all got started. How would any one of our pioneers open a store if the relatives or the family or their friends didn't help each other? To me, that custom that my father and his friends instituted amongst each other, to me was a great example of helping others. And you know what? When you help others, you help yourself too. So there was never a selfish motive, but of course, we hope that if we could help people, they'd help us. So I don't want you to think that, we're just a charitable organization to the point where we're giving things away,
But Mike, in early 80s, where a lot of people started expanding the grocery stores in 70s, you were just making a cosign to the people and help them out to go through this. And a lot of them, they never make the payment, or they fail to really do their obligation toward the bank and the loan.
No, if people go out of business legitimately, I don't have a problem with that. But when people go out of business and later on they make a lot of money and don't pay their bills, that bothers me. And that's true. A lot of people that lost money in business, let them go. They made a lot of money. I've never said a word to any of them. But I remember the importance of paying back people, and I'll give you an example. George Jalaba was one of the old-timers that came, but he was one of the younger ones. And he called me one day and wanted a loan and a consolidation loan. He was always very financially sound, but he wanted to expand his business. I took him to the bank, I'll never forget it, to borrow $600,000. And at that time, $600,000 is like 60 million today, you know. And I said, you know, this man is honorable, he's got a family, I've known him all my life, highly recommend him, you know. They said 600,000 is too much money. And then we looked on this guy looks on the credit report and he says, this guy went into bankruptcy once, you know. And I knew about it and I'd forgotten. I said, wait a minute, what does it say about that bankruptcy? Looks at it, what was this? Paid in full. After he went bankrupt, he went back and paid every single person in full. And the head banker says, give him all the money he wants and more. I never forgot that because it said, you know what, when you pay your bills and you pay him, you know, because you owe that money. If you're honorable, God will give you more. It's just that simple,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
You're a perfect example of it, you know.
Thank you.
You give from your heart and God gives you more. It's the way it should be.
Mike, I want to say thank you for taking time. I really appreciate it. I enjoy so much the stories of those pioneers and your family, your father and his brothers and others, and the story that building business and things, and helping refugees programs and wherever you do into the community. God bless you, give you long life and healthy years to come in.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much.